Robby, what's on your radar?
On Saturday, newly minted Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin declared an end to mask mandates in the state's public schools. Parents may now decide whether their children should wear masks. Youngkin's executive order has met with furious opposition from public schools. Several districts, including Arlington and Alexandria City Public Schools, which are both neighboring Washington, D.C., they vowed to openly defy the order, receiving encouragement, in fact, from White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki. In response, the governor said he would pursue all legal options to compel schools to let parents decide the mask issue on an individual basis. Let's watch.
Well, first of all, we wrote the order specifically to give all of the school systems basically 8 days to get ready, to listen to parents. And the fact that that tweet came out from Arlington County within minutes of my executive order, well, what that tells me is they haven't listened to parents yet. And if there's one thing that hopefully everybody heard in November is it is time to listen to parents. So over the course of this week, I hope they will listen to parents, because we will use every resource within the governor's authority to explore what we can do and will do in order to make sure that parents' rights are protected.
So there's good reason to move away from district-wide mask mandates. In defense of continuing mandatory masking, education officials are citing unpersuasive research from the CDC that ought to be rejected as the basis for an argument. Neither Arlington nor Alexandria immediately responded to my request for comment. When reached for comment by the Daily Caller, Arlington Public Schools admitted that their policy of mandatory masking for everyone ages 2 and older came straight from the CDC. Now, Arlington's first instinct was apparently to refuse comment entirely. A communication staffer for the district told the reporter, perhaps inadvertently, quote, "I recommend not responding to the Daily Caller. It won't get us anywhere." Love when communication staffers think their job is to not communicate. Similarly, Alexandria Superintendent Gregory Hutchins, who, by the way, his own child attends private school, said that the district will continue to defer to the CDC's finding that masks, combined with multiple other ACPS mitigation measures, have been effective in helping to protect the collective health and safety of our students and staff and keep our schools open for in-person learning. Hutchins' letter to the community suggests that the mask requirement might get more stringent rather than less. He said that he has received shipments of KN95 masks, and the alternative will be double masking. Nearly 2 years into the pandemic, the public education bureaucracy's desire to compel all students to vigorously conceal their faces hasn't weakened. In fact, it's growing stronger. But the CDC's research on school-wide mask mandates is much less impressive than the agency seems to think. The Atlantic has highlighted numerous problems with its recommendations, which were based on a profoundly misleading study of Arizona schools. Additionally, it should be noted that other countries are far less militant about masking in schools. The World Health Organization does not advise masks for children younger than 6. And the European Union recommends that students in K-8 schools be allowed to unmask. Scientists generally agree that, according to the research literature, wearing masks can help protect people from the coronavirus, but the precise extent of that protection, particularly in schools, remains unknown, and it might be very small, wrote The Atlantic's David Zweig. What data does exist has been interpreted into guidance in many different ways. That's a quote from that Atlantic article. In the face of the much, much more contagious Omicron variant of COVID-19, the benefits from masking might be even smaller. Omicron has managed to evade mitigation efforts almost entirely. Thankfully, the disease appears less virulent than previous strains, and vaccinated individuals should expect to have a mild bout with it. Healthy young people also have little to fear, rare exceptions aside. None of that is to say there's no benefit from wearing a mask, but district officials' policy of deciding the matter on behalf of all students is difficult to justify. Indeed, throughout the pandemic, local politicians have often forced schools to be the most masked environment. The few times that Washington, D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser has relaxed the city's mask mandate, she has kept it in place for schools. No one's faces are more concealed than young people's. The best thing to do would be to empower families to claim whatever money is being allocated to public schools on behalf of their children and use it to fund an educational option that fits their individual needs. In the current less than ideal world, public school officials who deny choice to families should at least concede that the science isn't actually on their side. And I was particularly furious about this yesterday because I went out to dinner with my wife and a friend to a restaurant in D.C., and it was packed. It was packed, jam-packed. people.
Where'd you go?
Barcelona restaurant.
Oh, nice.
And on 14th Street, right next to Le Diplomat, where Sonia Sotomayor was dining with. That's a little joke. She was wrongly tagged by Politico as having been there after the oral arguments. Anyway, so this place is jam-packed, which is totally fine. But these are people unmasked, laughing, shouting, eating, drinking for hours. Meanwhile, the children are in school all day have to be masked or double masked or K95 masked. It makes no sense. It's infuriating that we are forcing this on kids more than anyone else. They are the most mitigated from coronavirus of all. And there's no science to support that they need protections that other people don't.
Well, the policy at Barcelona should be that if you want to take a sip or you want to take a bite of your food.
Briefly remove
No. You have to go outside onto the sidewalk, have it there, and then come back in with your mask.
That's the policy at some university campuses, right?
And at schools too.
At schools, schools have gone insane.
In order to drink water, you have to like go out into a separate area, like so that you can then just take your mask down and take a sip of water.
It's completely crazy.
No.
It's completely crazy. And so right now we do have the citywide mask mandate in place, but for a little while we didn't. And so there was no expectation to be masked at a restaurant or a gym or just in the workplace unless the place privately mandates it. But the schools, you were still had to be masked in. Why?
In the Northern Virginia, kids are mostly all vaxxed.
Yeah.
And their parents are vaxxed and boosted. A lot of the older kids are probably vaxxed and boosted. And I could understand parents who were like, look, we're going to be over this Omicron wave in like 3 weeks. Let's just like white knuckle it for 3 more weeks. But that's actually just convenient reasoning. Like they would be saying that whether or not there was the 3 more weeks of the Omicron wave coming in. And I sympathize with that. Like we are in like kind of like a white knuckle period. Like if you haven't gotten it yet and you can make it through the next 2 or 3 weeks in like New York or DC, places where it's coming down, you might actually dodge this thing if we don't get another virulent variant that it can break through, which we might. We might not. We don't know. Like everyone's talking as if they're certain that that'll happen, but it might not.
And I just look. You can keep wearing a mask. We're not saying Youngkin didn't say masks are forbidden. That would be crazy. I would oppose that. But it's just like we're getting to the point where your health is your responsibility. Get vaccinated. Wear a mask if you want. But like actually the CDC, I mentioned this to you just before the segment started. I just saw on Twitter the CDC quietly revised guidance, apparently weeks ago, for certain categories of children who are learning to read. Said, well, maybe they should actually use transparent masks because it's important for them to see the movement of the mouth to learn to read. Like, oh, really? A year and a half into this thing, we're realizing that, actually kids might need to, have some visibility there in order to learn to read?
I struggled learning to read in elementary school, and I'm trying to imagine trying to learn to read with a teacher's mask over his or her mouth. Like, show me again the T. I can't see.
Right.
Like, what's the difference between the T and the TH and the S and the? It's brutal.
When Jen Psaki can't be understood, she lowers her mask so people can hear her.
Right. And these are grown people with graduate degrees, probably.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, some of these kids have learning disabilities or just learning struggles. It's a little harder for them. I don't know, man. It's just nuts. It's nuts what we've put kids through, what we've expected of them compared to everybody else.
Right. And it's a cost-benefit question. We don't know if they're even that effective in school settings. But let's say that they are slightly effective. We also do know that they come with a cost. And it is very easy to make the case that on a global level, the cost is higher than the benefit.
Yeah. And this is not something that everyone else is doing. They don't do this. They don't do masking to this extent for kids in Europe. They just don't. They just don't. This is a course that we have chartered alone because of what the CDC has said, which is more vigorously for masking of kids than any other body there is. And that study they're relying on is not good. And that's not just me saying that. That's the Atlantic saying that. The Atlantic is not known for its, for being soft on coronavirus. They run articles about how you should be canceling canceling your birthday parties, etc.
Yeah, I'm sure they lost subscribers for that one.
Yeah, so take it. Don't just take it from me. Take it from them. This is, look, I'm sure the masks do some good, but they're doing a lot of harm. We've asked this of kids for forever, and it's not. Look, I know for some people they don't mind wearing them. They don't think it's a major inconvenience. A lot of people feel like wearing a mask for 8 hours all day is an inconvenience. It presents challenges. It's not fun. It's frustrating. It's harder to engage and socialize and absorb your environment, especially when you have to do it all day, every day. I can't imagine doing that. I don't have to do that, thank God. But we've asked that of a group of people who are mostly safe from horrible COVID outcomes.
Right, and there are lots of kids, who don't go to school with totally clean clothes every day. There are a lot of kids who are living in very difficult circumstances. A lot of those kids are going to have dirty masks, and are going to have lower quality masks. And it's fine if some schools can hand out some masks, but that's not solving the problem for every kid. And so this is something that's going to disproportionately hurt the poorer kids.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a shame. Well, our rising panel discussion is next, so please stick around for that. We'll be right back.